Arpin, I'm not sure if we can qualify, if this qualifies as an emergency podcast, because if we were first responders, more than 24 hours for emergency is not good response.
No, the emergency would be over. It would be a tragedy. It wouldn't be an emergency anymore. It would be a tragedy. So this is not an emergency podcast, but Joe Veleno did sign with the Montreal Canadiens. And then he was kind enough to come on with us. So we're going to talk to Joe Veleno about joining his childhood team and just a whole bunch of stuff about what to look forward to with the Canadiens and some of his past, what's happened in his career. I thought it was a pretty honest conversation. I think you guys will enjoy it. So let's hear from the newest member of the Montreal Canadiens, Joe Veleno.
All right. So we're here with Joe Veleno. Joe, welcome to Montreal. Welcome to your hometown. That's a pretty exciting feeling to join the Canadiens.
Yeah, extremely excited. It's obviously something you dream about, being from here and playing for the Canadiens one day. It's truly incredible. So I'm really, grateful and honored to, be part of this organization.
So Joe and I were just talking off the air and I just wanted to not share, but I mean, it's an interesting dynamic where a player, we always talk to players who come to the Bell Center and all the family that has to come to the Bell Center and everything. And so now, Joe was telling me he's got a lot of family in town and how he's going to manage who gets to come to the games and stuff. So this is because now it's going to be 41 of these. And so, but hopefully that first one is going to be quite something and you'll have a lot of support, I'm sure. That'll be great. So do you have a childhood memory about the Canadiens that kind of stands out, that you maybe thought of after signing, or that has kind of come to mind and be like, man, this is really happening?
Yeah, I mean, besides going to the games and watching the Habs, there was my Pee Wee hockey year. Our team was nominated, to represent the Canadiens at the Pee Wee Quebec tournament. So we got actually the opportunity to do like a skills competition on the ice. At the Bell Center in front of obviously a packed arena, like they usually do that every year. They do like a skills competition. So we were actually on the ice, like our whole team had gone on the ice. So I think it was Lars Eller, that was kind of like the guest, and that was a pretty cool moment. Obviously never played in front of or been a part of or actually be seen in front of all those people on a hockey. For me, that was kind of like the first big moment, when I think of the Canadiens and being at the Bell Center and actually being on the ice as a kid with an NHL player there. It was pretty special, and obviously just the Bell Center in general, it's a special place to play, and you think of that arena it's probably one of the best arenas in the NHL. So it's pretty cool.
So you would have been 12? Is that right? At that time?
Yeah. I was 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
You are going to get to do that in all likelihood, assuming you're healthy. You're going to get to do that event this year. So that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
Can you describe how the last few weeks have been for you? First there was there was the trade. You've been bought out. You ended up being a free agent probably earlier in your career than you would have thought. So, and then a few days pass and you end up with Montreal. Must have been really a whirlwind of emotions and ups and downs really in a short period of time, right?
Yeah, it was. It was something that I was unfamiliar with, never experienced before. So the trade, obviously surprised me a little bit. I didn't quite expect it. I thought, my time in Chicago, I think, obviously I think when I first got there was, a bit of getting used to and kind of had to adapt a little bit, maybe the first 5 games. And I thought afterwards, I thought my game was slowly improving every game, and felt confidence. I felt like I was building something, and obviously, no playoffs, and the season kind of ended, and I had a good conversation with them at the end of the year with the management, and things seemed to be on a positive note. And so I, was determined this summer to obviously have a big year. I was not happy with how things happened last year. Wasn't happy with my game, and went through obviously a lot of ups and downs. And so I was really determined, once the year ended, to start training. I only took I think 2 weeks off, like max, and then I just started training right away. I got in the gym. I got kind of my summer organized a little bit. I started skating earlier than I normally would, and just felt like I had a lot to improve on and get better. So, and then obviously the buyout happens, and I get traded again, and within the span of I think maybe 10 days or so. So for me, it was just kind of like a slap in the face almost, and almost a wake up call, and that's kind of it really got to me. And for a couple days I got to reflect. I obviously have my family here, my friends, and my trainers, and everyone who's kind of in my circle that looks out for me and supports me throughout my career. So got to speak with them a little bit, and got to share some ideas, and we kind of just went from there. But I stayed patient. Obviously free agency, you never really know what could happen, and what can happen, and when it could happen. So I just try to stay patient, and I was really lucky that I ended up with Montreal. It was definitely a big goal of mine, and an option right from the start. When free agency hit, I was just really hoping that it would work out, and it did.
So
if I may, just quickly as a follow up, what, in terms of that time of reflection, what came out of that?
Well, obviously you think of a lot of things, right? Like you think of, what went wrong, and what you can do to be better, right? Because at a certain point, the opportunity and the chances, they come less and less, right? So, as you get older, it's less and less of an opportunity that you get. And, when you're younger, you try to get that experience, and teams are willing to be patient, and so on and so forth. And so for me, it just kind of made me reflect, I'm getting older now. I gotta, create an identity and establish myself as, what kind of player I want to become, and where I want to be. If I want to be a player that, kind of goes all over the place, or if, obviously nobody wants that. Sometimes it's out of your control. Sometimes there's a lot of things that factor into that. But, I was always someone that, never used to be traded or bought out. I was always, growing up, always a star player wherever I went. So for me, that never even crossed my mind. And now that it happens, obviously at this stage, and at my age, I'm a little unfamiliar with that, but that's part of the business side of it. But just reflecting on my summer, and things I really need to get better at, and like I said, I wasn't happy with the way things were last year. So just thinking of everything I could do better, and try to work on that this summer.
So I want to pick up on that, because I find that to be one of the underrated, difficult parts of the NHL that I don't think the general public really fully grasps. Is, you mentioned that growing up, you were a star player all the time. You were given exceptional status, obviously, at 15. You were on a fast track to the NHL. People knew your name from a very young age. How, and I've seen it with countless players, but from your perspective, it's obviously every time you go up a rung in hockey, whether that's major, junior, or NCAA or whatever, and then to the pros and what have you, you do have to kind of redefine yourself within that environment. So how would you describe that process, how it's gone for you? Because I feel like kids that get the exceptional status thing, it can be a great thing, but it can be a burden too, and a tough thing to manage maybe. For you, when you mentioned creating an identity, what's the process been like to build your NHL identity, as opposed to maybe what you did as a kid, and maybe even what you did in junior? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's the good thing to touch up on. But so obviously, everyone in the NHL, once upon a time when they were younger, were always star players. And, come to the NHL, everyone's, got high level skill, got high level, even like your bottom six players are, there's still some skill there. And so I think a lot of it obviously becomes, it's a mental sport. I think there's a lot of mental, there's a big mental side of the game of hockey. There's a lot of things that can make or break you, and a lot of different circumstances that you're put into. But I think for me was, I had to almost modify my game in a sense that, I got to the NHL, and look, I didn't get that opportunity like right off the bat where I was playing, in a top six role or playing, first power play or second power play. I was kind of molded where, look, I had a 5-game tryout, when I came over from Sweden. The following year, I was one of the last guys to be sent down, but I kind of understood that I was young, and, I understood that they wanted me to play in the American League and not just kind of sit there and play like 10 minutes a night at 20 years old. And although it's pretty, obviously you want to play in the NHL, but you got to, do what's best for your development. So, I'm glad that I was able to do that. And, they felt like I went to the American League. I had a positive attitude. I had a really, good start to the year. There was an injury that occurred in Detroit, one of Detroit's centermen's. And then I called up and I stuck ever since. But it was almost like, I was just, that's what I was. And like, I felt like, as the years went on, and I felt like that's kind of how I was looked upon. And just because, the situation in Detroit, with signing new players and free agency, and the teams obviously pushing to get into the playoffs. And that's what, that's what every team wants to do, right? Like you want to put your best team out on the ice and give your, the fans the best of the best to watch. So, anyways, it worked out a little bit in Detroit. There were some good moments. There was some okay moments. There was some opportunity that was there, and there was times where, I did well with that opportunity. There were times where I didn't. And, I got to be honest with that, right? Like I'm not going to lie to myself, but, to a point where, things didn't work out as well. And, I thought, a different change of scenery would help me out. And, I got to Chicago and I felt good, and, started finding some qualities in my game that kind of, reminded me about, when I was in junior and when I was young. I felt like I had kind of like a little bit of a swagger and confidence back to my game, later, when I got to Chicago. And then, obviously this happened, but, so I'm really looking forward to this, and the opportunity that presents itself in front of me. I know that Marty, there's some good things said about Marty and the staff, and you've seen it with certain players that have come in here. Look at Cole and Kirby and Newhook, and guys that have taken another step to their game and have found an elevation in their development. So I'm really looking forward to working with them and the staff, and it seems like they know what they're doing here. They're leaning in the right direction. So it obviously makes the decision a little bit easier in a case like that.